Well, welcome everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Gail Rubin. I am the doyen of death with a good goodbye funeral planning for those who don't plan to die, and the event coordinator for the Before I Die New Mexico Festival. This is our second annual festival. Yay!
Yay.
Third day, still standing. Yay! I want to give a shout out to all of the companies that make this festival possible. Most of these events are free or low cost, and that's thanks to companies like EternityGardens.com, National Guardian Life Insurance Company, the French Funerals and Cremations family of companies, Morris Hall, a estate planning law firm, and our sponsor Jim Klitz is here. If you have questions for him about estate planning, I hope you'll talk to him after this event. Estate Pros, Karen Hyatt, one of our panelists today. Passages International, which we had a tour of yesterday. Some of you go on that. A lot of biodegradable and eco-friendly funeral products. Legacy Concierge, which is all about digital assets and managing those, and Zia Trust. You have a question? Oh, you did. Okay, and me, a good goodbye funeral planning for those who don't plan to die. So I'm very excited to introduce to you our panel today on downsizing, how to downsize and still keep your family legacy. We have Hazel Thornton with Organize for Life, Miriam Ortiz-Pino, and your company is?
More Than Organized.
More Than Organized, and of course Karen Hyatt with Estate Pros. So I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves and talk a bit about what they feel is a great way to downsize and still keep your legacy, and Hazel will go first.
So I'm Hazel with Organize for Life and Beyond. It used to just be Organize for Life until I got into the and beyond part, and which you'll hear more about. There's different kinds of downsizing. The kinds of downsizing that you normally think about are maybe you're moving from a house to an apartment, or an apartment to a nursing home, and there simply isn't enough room to hold all your stuff, right? Well, there's also downsizing. Maybe you're going to stay in the same place, but you've just got so much stuff, you want to simplify your life and declutter and enjoy the space that you have more. Well, the kind of downsizing I want to talk about is the kind when somebody's died, and either you have inherited stuff that you don't know what to do with, or maybe you're going to be leaving stuff to people who they don't know what to do with it either. I see a few people nodding. So how many people have inherited stuff from their parents, like ever? And how many didn't know what to do with it when they? And how many? How many have children? So I do not have children, but I am a child of my parents. And 17 years ago, my mom left me 17 boxes of scrapbooks. Well, that was an appropriate response, because I'm not talking 17 scrapbooks, I'm talking about 17 boxes. Or so I thought. and so what did I do with those 17 boxes? Now, I didn't have to deal with all of her other stuff, fortunately. We all got dibs on what we wanted to keep. And my aunt who lived with her dealt with the rest of it. And she basically had a big yard sale with the things that she didn't want to keep. And so these boxes did not contain things. They were all paper. When I say scrapbooks, I mean the old-fashioned kind where you cut things out of, and paste it into the scrapbook, or birthday cards, but also photo albums, also letters, also artwork and journals, all kinds of stuff. But I was busy at the time in 2001. I was full-time employed by a phone company in California. I did not live here. And I wasn't a professional organizer yet. So what did I do? I'll tell you what I did if you promise not to tell anybody. And don't do what I did, unless you really have to. You got to do what you got to do sometimes. I was the executor of the estate, and I left my brother, who lives here, money to build a shed in his backyard. to house the boxes and scrapbooks. Because I wasn't in a position to deal with them, and nobody else wanted to deal with them. And so there they sat for 16 years. And so meanwhile, I moved to Albuquerque. I became a professional organizer. I help people organize their garages and their closets and their kitchens and taught their schedules and their time management. And then eventually, a group was created called the Association of Personal Photo Organizers. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more about photo organizing. So the photo organizers, they talk all the time about preserving your photos and printing the digital ones and digitizing the printed ones and how to share them with people, how to organize, share, and preserve them. But they also talk about target markets. Well, one of the target markets was genealogists. And so most of the photo organizers are not genealogists themselves, but they help preserve photos for genealogists. But what I thought was, hey, wait a minute, I'm a genealogist, I forgot. I've been so busy with my business, I forgot how much I enjoy genealogy. So I started doing that for clients, helping them either doing the research for them or helping them do the research or organizing their stuff, their files, their papers. And eventually, though, the photo organizers got to me, and I started thinking about those boxes in the shed. And thinking, that's probably not the best place to keep them, because although it's not a hot attic and it's not a damp basement, but it is my brother's gardening shed. There's dirt in there. There's rototillers and things. Nice. So last year we finally got together, and we on Mother's Day we started going through the boxes, and. Once a week we would get together and go through a box. Only what happened when we opened the doors of the shed and counted the boxes? Oh no, there were not 17 boxes. There were 33 boxes.
They multiplied while you weren't looking.
I never looked in there. I never counted.
Like those wire hangers.
So we started going through the boxes, and we found some wonderful things. Old photos we didn't know existed. Most of it was paper, but there was one box of cassette tapes which have my mom's voice on them, which is wonderful. And I would tell people about it, and they're like, "Oh, you've got some, a treasure trove there, a gold mine." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm happy for some of these things I'm finding in the boxes, but it's more like panning for gold. You know how they take the big." I think you might know what I'm getting at. You take the pan and you fill it up with the river bottom and you sluice it around, and I forget the word, the silt, gets washed away because it's light, and what you're left with maybe is a nugget of gold in the bottom. These boxes are full of silt and a few gold nuggets. So it's hard. It's not easy. I've heard of people who they go through the parent stuff and they're like, "Oh, I got to know my parents so much better through doing this." Well, good for them. I can't say I'm learning a whole lot about my mom. I'm happy for the gold nuggets, but it's a lot of work. And my goal is to get those, I'm not done, to get those boxes down to about 20%, which is about 6 boxes. And I'm still up at about 20 boxes. And I have yet to do what I recommend, which is to find the gold nuggets, and you've all got gold nuggets in your homes, but don't wait to share them. Find a way to identify which things are important to you, and let whoever's going to inherit them from you know which things you don't care anything about, which things are important to you, but why. Tell the story of it. So I'm still getting to the point where I'm going to be I'm not still getting to the point. I am blogging about it. So if you want to follow my mom's boxes adventure, you can go on my website and follow my blog, because there's 6 or 7 posts already, but there's more to come. And you can also sign up for my newsletter while you're at it. You can sign up over here or online. And so I'm trying to get down to, probably the stuff you got. I mean, I'm not judging because I haven't seen your stuff, but probably, maybe 20% of it is the most important part to make sure that someone knows what you want done with it and why it's important to you. Because they're not going to know. They're not going to know what to do with it. And you don't want your loved ones to be panning for gold. And if you only got one box, great. But if you got 33 boxes, try not to leave 33 boxes of paper to your kids, okay? And that's all for right now. Thank you.
I'm Miriam Ortiz-Pino, and I am with More Than Organized. I am a certified professional organizer and simplicity expert. I love helping make things easier for people. And one of the things that's a problem is the boxes for mom and grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and whoever else you're inheriting or leaving to your kids. And so, like Hazel, I think there's a lot to be said about story and what do you want to leave as your legacy to the people that have to deal with your stuff when you're gone? Do you want them to know all the nitty-gritty details of your life, or do you want to tell a story that they will pass on for a long time that may or may not turn out to be true in the future, but that you get to decide what it is? It's all about control. We put stuff aside for later because you don't feel you have the energy or the bandwidth to deal with it right now. And so later has arrived, right? Like as we retire and we think we're gonna have time to go through the house to do that stuff, wouldn't you rather be doing the traveling and the crafts and the hanging out with the grandkids and that kind of thing? So how can you find that balance between the two? I've got all this stuff to deal with, I have this story to create for the family, and yet I don't want to go through all this stuff, right? I set it here for later. It turns out, as I look at it, I'm just overwhelmed. I can't think. I don't know how to make the decisions. What if there was an easier way to do that, right? What if there was a system in place that you could follow, a step-by-step set of instructions, and get through all that stuff fairly easily, a few hours a week without having to interfere with most of the rest of your life? You could still travel, you could still hang out and have fun, but you could still get through the stuff and create that story for yourself. Would that be good? Yeah? Good, because I created it. I actually do a thing called Streamline Your Life, and it's all about how to approach the stuff. And there's a lot of preparation work that isn't involved in organizing. It's more about figuring out your story. What do you want? What is the desired outcome if you were to declutter and downsize and get rid of some of your stuff? Or at least look at some of your stuff so you actually know what you have. What if you got rid of just the trash? What if you got rid of just the stuff that you don't want other people to know about? What if you kept only the things that allow you to live every day to its fullest for the rest of your life? What if that was possible? And that way you wouldn't have to leave it up to someone else in your family to go through your stuff and try to decipher what you meant by owning that thing in the closet that no one knows what it is, right? There's always that thing. There's always the thing that's really special to you that there's no reason for it. Like it might be a piece of art, it might be an old stuffed animal, it might be a piece of rock, I don't know. It always comes up when I work with a client. There's that one piece that you're like, oh, it's no big deal, let's just get rid of it. And there's tears in their eyes and it's like obviously important. But why? And if you don't tell that story now, while you have the capacity to control what that story is, people won't know. And they'll get rid of the stuff that you don't, that actually might be important to you. I don't know. So in my own family, when my grandmother died, she made us do the go around and put little colored dots on the things we all wanted. And she had a little journal and she put little notes on all the ones that several of us wanted about who she thought should actually get it. It was great. It only caused a couple fights and things have come and gone from various people in the family because they know who would like it next. So, for instance, my cousin moved into a smaller place and she couldn't fit the entire dining set. She could only fit the sideboard and the table, so she gave me the hutch because I had also been interested in it. So things are moving around through the family because we talked about it, we thought about it, we laughed about it. We all sat around on the floor and disassembled the photo albums, you know, but they were gathered together in the first place. And like Hazel not knowing exactly what was in what boxes, you never know what treasures there are. So we did that for the stuff that seemed important, the big stuff, the furniture, the memorabilia, the china, you know, the stuff that seemed to have legitimate historical reference. And then there was a few things left. And there was a couple things I just really liked. I didn't know why, they had always been there. And it turns out they were two pieces of art that no one else in the family knew anything about or cared about, and I just kind of loved, and so I got them. And then I researched what they were. And I asked other members of my family where it came from. You know, my aunts and uncles, like, where did this beautiful black pot that's held the matches on the fireplace for 30 years, where did that come from? Well, it turns out Maria Martinez had my grandmother help her get her granddaughter baptized at the cathedral, and it was a gift as thank you. Everyone thought it was the matchbook holder. I have it. But someone did know the story. One person knew the story and was then able to pass it on to me, but Grandma hadn't left a note in the pot or anything about it. I just ended up getting it through other relatives, and it took some work. So what if you could help some of those special stories of things that actually crisscrossed with historical reference or artistic reference were available to your family? What if you took a little bit of time to just write a couple of those things down as you go through your stuff as well? You know, there's all those things we used to do or wanted to do and never did it. What if your family came across a bunch of stuff, the stuff you wanted to do and never got to, and then they're really sad that you never had the chance to do that? And then they feel bad that they interfered with your life because you were in the way and they didn't get to do the stuff. Like, there's all those emotional guilt trips and or stories we're all going to make up about the stuff. Why not tell the actual story of it, right? So that's my basis for wanting to help you make it as easy as possible so that it can be fun. It can be a combination of actually getting to the work you put off doing because you thought you'd have time later when you were tired and you were old and didn't have as much mobility and it was hard and so it became overwhelming quicker. What if you just had someone to help you do that? The steps and maybe the support to do that. So if you want to find out a little bit more about how that would look, I also have a sign-up sheet over there, and I'm running another version of the Streamline Your Life course starting on November 13th. So that's all available as well. But I just want to get you guys thinking about it as story instead of a big pile of stuff that is exhausting and you don't know what to do with. Make it fun. Play with it. Whittle it down a little bit at a time and tell your story.
Thank you. Well, I completely concur with both Miriam and Hazel. I'm Karen Hyatt. I'm the founder and director of Estate Pros. And all of you should have one of our brochures. And I am so pleased to join these two women because sometimes we each just need a little someone beside us to help motivate us to get the job done. I often tell the story, I just started this company almost 8 years ago. And about 6 years ago, my own bedroom in my home, I love books, and so there are floor-to-ceiling bookcases on 3 walls in that bedroom. And I even hired one of my own employees to come spend 2 days with me to help me dust all the books, help me purge things that I didn't care about anymore. And so even if we're in the business, I think, like you know, you saved those now 30 boxes like rabbits. They're propagating in that shed. And I don't mind telling you this, because sometimes I think it takes the guilt and shame away. I pay rent on 3 personal storage units. And I'm in the business. And so I just want to say that to say we all can get into these like poor habits, or there's never enough time to go through the things. Now I am happy to say that last Saturday my brother and I cleared one of the 3 units, and we found boxes, and my mother's still living. She's 88, but we found one of her boxes that's marked Betty Kennett's Christmas decorations. You know, she doesn't even remember that they're there. So we all have these challenges. We made some handouts for you today, and I just want to point out some things about them. The first one is called A Harmonious Process, because as you two have mentioned, we'd like this not to be filled with shame or guilt or morbidity. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to go through my stuff. This harmonious process is just suggesting some ways to take small bites out of the bigger task. One of my very longtime friends, I met her in college, and that was many years ago, who lives in Fort Worth, Texas. A few months ago, we were talking on the phone, and she's now in her 80s, and she said, Karen, I want to give my library, because she loves books, to special people who will really appreciate my books, but it's just overwhelming. And I said, look, just do this. Every Saturday morning, just take 2 bookshelves and purge those books and decide which of your friends are going to receive those. And then give yourself the gift of having a pre-planned brunch with another friend that you're going to go celebrate. You did 2 bookshelves. Well, I totally forgot about it. I was just suggesting a way she could do the task a little bit at a time. Well, about 6 weeks later, she emailed me and said, I've gone through my entire library. And she was just so relieved that she could do it 2 bookshelves at a time and also enjoy Eggs Benedict with somebody, you know, when it was over. Then the second sheet in your handouts, really we've created it as a worksheet. And today I don't know that I'll be able to get to too many of these helpful suggestions, but we find in our work that there are key things in our homes that everyone is really interested in receiving from you, or you really care about who gets that piece of jewelry or that watch that was handed down from your great-grandfather, and that you want that to go to a nephew or a grandson. We also find that firearms often have familial, historical, significant value. In fact, one of the services we offer, and this is just based on my background, we find that a lot of times among family members there can be conflict about selecting things after someone dies. And so because of my background in communications and psychology, a lot of times clients will hire me just to facilitate that process. Well, about 7 years ago, a family had hired me to do that, and I said, okay, what do you think is going to be the stumbling block in this process? What holds the most heat? And it was these 3 rifles that had been handed down through family members. So I said, fine, we're just going to start there. On that Saturday morning, we'll get all the family members in there and we'll have a discussion about it. Well, it was just amazing. I think I almost didn't have to say a word. I think it just helped that there was a neutral party there. And so each of the family members really brought their best selves forward to decide who should get those rifles. And just because we live also in a western state, we find guns and firearms in almost every home. So anyway, the second page is kind of a worksheet for you. And then the third page, I've now mentioned it twice, I know, that I love books and I love literature. So this is simply some quotes that have to do with material items. One of the things I always like to impress on people is not to feel guilty about what you have if it is a whole collection of matchbooks, if it's a collection of seashells, if it's a collection of rocks or little, tears from Coachy, from Tent Rocks. Those things have a significant value, sentimental value to each of us. And our items in our home really hold our memories, whether that's a bow and arrow and you remember your dad teaching you how to use a bow and arrow, or it's the dress you wore to your first prom. Again, coming back to stories, these items hold our memories and they actually carry our legacy forward. So to take a little time to make some decisions now But I often suggest an even more assertive step, and that is to find those special pieces of jewelry, books, art, and go ahead while you're still living and gift it to the people you want to have that. And then while you're still living, while we're still living, we can enjoy that person enjoying it. And so it's like you get to enjoy it twice in your life. The life you had with that object, and now the life your friend or family member has with it. So, I don't know, I guess questions maybe come next, but thank you so much, Gail.
Yes. So I did want to point out, thank you all ladies, great insights. I think we've got a lot of questions that are going to come out of what you've presented, which are, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else when it comes to piles of stuff. And I did actually do something that was taking a step, because like you, I have no children, and I have had a family heirloom, a samovar from the old country, from Russia, with all these Russian stamps on it. And I have no children to pass this family heirloom onto. It came to America with my great-grandparents fleeing the Russian pogroms, so I didn't want it just to go to, you know, an estate sale without the story. The story is what makes all of these objects important. So my uncle died, my mother's twin brother, and we all went to Florida for the funeral, and I took that samovar with me. We made it part of our ritual as part of the funeral, and I left it in Florida with my parents. It's like, we'll figure this out later, but it's not my responsibility at the moment anymore. I did want to point out there are drawing slips that we gave to everybody. Those are for the festival is having a drawing for everybody who participates in every festival event, the opportunity to win 2 burial plots at La Puerta Natural Burial Ground. And we are going to give everybody goodie bags who enters the drawing, which have information from our sponsors, as well as the 4 DVD TV interview series that I did called A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. So I hope you'll enter that, and we'll collect those up at the end of the talk. So, anybody have questions they want to ask our panelists, or comments you'd like to share?
Seriously, we'll answer about anything.
Yeah.
She mentioned firearms. I'm curious, so when people inherit firearms, how do they register them then? Or how do you know, what happens then? Is it just, you don't have to register them, they just get passed down?
Yeah, you know what? We deal with firearms every day, and I've never been asked that question. And no, I'm glad you asked it. It's just
that to register.
Okay, I was going to ask you if that was true.
Yeah, you can't, you would still need a concealed carry or something if you were going to carry everybody. Historical weapons do not have to be registered.
That's good. The only thing I do want to add to that, and I'm sure most of you know this, but if you're going to ship it to another relative or friend across state lines, you have to use a registered gun dealer to do that. You can't just go into FedEx and send, you know, a 44 to Texas. Probably Texas would like you to be able to do that, but anyway, so you do have to use a registered gun dealer for that kind of thing, but thanks for that information.
You can also, if you're trying to get rid of the weapons, you just call the police and they send the actual bomb squad to your house to pick up the weapons and destroy them.
And let me say, that's different in every community.
Is
That's true in Albuquerque, right, but in Santa Fe, you can actually drive the gun to the police station, or if you want to sell it, and you don't walk in with the gun. I mean, you go in first and say, I've got a gun in my car, you know, and you make sure it's unloaded. But, or if you're going to sell it, like at Ron Peterson's here in Albuquerque, you can take it directly there. But.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you, and I'm not a gun person myself, but I know plenty of them, whether you could, if you inherit it, you don't want to keep these things, you can sell sell, how do you get rid of them?
Yeah, well, of course you can sell them, so.
Okay.
China. I got my nose China, I got my China. Nobody seems to want China anymore. So what do we do with
That's
it?
right.
Use it. Don't buy another set of everyday dishes, use it. Or give it to someone to use it on a day-to-day basis.
Don't
Or
worry
send
about
it-
breaking any.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we have that we think our kids are gonna want, or then they don't want. And it's just too bad. You know, the big old clunky brown furniture and even the silver plate. People think, oh, I'm holding on to this platter because it's worth something. No, it's not. Check it out, make sure, see if it's worth something. If it's not, and you aren't using it, and you don't have anybody to pass it to, donate it.
So where do I donate it?
Goodwill.
Goodwill takes anything? All right.
Actually, Goodwill is picky, I've found.
No. Hang on. Actually, different areas have different relationships with their Goodwill franchise, if you will. And ours here is actually the clearinghouse for the United Way of New Mexico Charities. And so
Yes.
they have a 5-layer giving system. And the first thing is they fulfill wish lists for all the charities in Mexico. So it may not get into the store, but it may have ended up in that halfway house in grants. You know, so it is a really great resource when you don't want to spend the time and energy researching every specific charity that you might think that would be helpful to. They do all that for you.
Could you repeat the name of the organization?
Goodwill.
Goodwill, okay.
Yep.
I just want to also add Savers is another
Yeah.
place you can donate. And what they do is they try and keep all of their proceeds and money within the state.
Yeah.
So it's another good resource.
So if you take all the serving pieces as well as all the plates, whether it's Goodwill or Savers, they will take it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They also take clothes. People think, oh, I can't donate these clothes because they're stained or they're ripped or they're not sellable. They do take them here at our Goodwill in Albuquerque, and they make money selling them as rags.
Or insulation.
St. Vincent de Paul will take anything, furniture, anything, dishes, whatever, because they right away take it to people who
Who is this?
She's saying St. Vincent de Paul.
Yes.
And also Safe House, which is a domestic violence shelter, has a good store, and so does Women's Housing Coalition.
Right.
And so does Joy Ministries, which is right downtown here in Albuquerque. That's kind of an amazing process, that whole system.
But again, all 3 of those are tied into the United Way and Goodwill. So,
What about sewing machines? I have 4.
do you sew?
No, never have.
Donate them.
Where?
Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Okay.
It's very easy. People try to make it very complicated. That, oh, well, it's different. It must have to go somewhere different. It doesn't.
Because we've been told that they don't take everything. That's what we've heard.
Yeah, I'm not sure where
Try
my
it.
mom even thinks that they don't take things and that she saw them throw something away. And I'm like, are you sure that wasn't just going into the bin of like things, not trash? And
Yeah.
she can't tell me, but I've been on a tour of the thing. We took all the organizers on a tour and a learning thing because there were some issues with Goodwill in other parts of the country, and ours is fantastic. They also employ disabled and mentally challenged people. They are the head injury specialist to reintegrate people into work from the VA. So it supports all different kinds of charities and causes that you might be interested in, all in one location.
And the president doesn't make umpteen millions of dollars like you see on the internet, you know,
No.
that's not true, it's just not true. I don't know how much the president makes, but the meme going around on the internet
It's
is not
commensurate with the
true.
director level of a nonprofit for the state.
I always tell my clients, if you have a specific charity you want to give things to, great, as long as you actually take them there. If you're giving them to me to put in my car to take someplace, I'm going to Goodwill because it's one-stop shopping for me.
Yeah.
But if you, like Miriam, my clients get hung up on, well, I need to take this one to the animal shelter and this one to the, the place where the rehab people, and this one to the hardware, the restore, which is awesome. But, if you actually get those things to those places and it's important to you, great, perfect. But but I just go to Goodwill personally.
And I just go to Goodwill like every 2 weeks. And if I only have one bag, I go. So if I'm getting rid of a few things, I don't wait. I just fill up that bag and I go straight to Goodwill. They take everything.
That's a wonderful habit to be into.
Yes. And we still have a long ways to go.
Well, there's several in town.
Okay.
There's 3 donation drop-offs though, San Mateo and,
Oh,
Wow.
right? I can think about
oh, are there?
5 or 6.
Paseo and
Holly.
Holly.
There's one on Coors.
And
there's-
Coors and
Manal,
I've never
Rubin.
good with the question.
There's a store on Alameda also over by,
Sprouts.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah.
Although I would like to point out, I tried to donate a few things and they turned me down.
Okay.
They wouldn't take my old tiki torches. They
Oh,
won't,
no, because hazardous.
hazardous
So they will not
materials.
take old tube
Yeah.
TVs, they will not take any oil lamps or tiki torch type things,
Old mattresses.
and mattresses.
They-
No, that's gross, think about it. Okay,
Well,
so
I tried to donate
grossness.
camping pads and they said, those are old mattresses.
Look it up on the internet.
Yeah.
Look at Google.
There are a couple
Google Goodwill.
things, but it tends to be the things that are hazardous or gross.
I will,
They don't take open toiletries, you know.
Yeah,
I will add, sometimes you will come across a mattress that isn't gross and it is donatable. Steve Stucker has a program
Yeah.
locally here
Yeah.
that takes mattresses, so if you absolutely want to donate one, and it's in good condition, no stains, no
like it's been
stains,
slept on twice.
no stains,
Yeah.
No bed bugs.
they'll take it.
Do you know
That's for
anybody
kids.
that donates old family portraits, like to the Hispanic Cultural Center? And how do you go about doing that? 'Cause I ended up with some that are like from the 1800s. They're in New Mexico, that's my family, so
Yeah,
it's
just
really old.
just call the Hispanic Cultural Center. This, if they won't take it, the Special Collections Library, and they're very connected with the Genealogy Research Center, is it Genealogy Research Center? And they will point you in the right direction. They have a couple different ways they might use them at the Cultural Center, and so I do know that they like to at least be informed when that stuff is available, so.
And also the New Mexico Genealogical Society, especially if you can write a story that goes with the photo.
Yeah.
You know, document it and write the genealogy of it.
And photos of Albuquerque, the Albuquerque Museum has the special Albuquerque photograph collection. They will take almost anything that they can verify is historically Albuquerque, you know, like pictures of street and landscape and prominent families and that kind of thing, day-to-day life in Albuquerque type situations. But it kind of has to be, well, they'll look at it for you if you have any questions.
One of the things genealogy-wise that I've realized as a single person and no children, and not really a lot of other family and not a lot of, you know, but I've got a couple of nieces and nephews, but what I've realized is if nobody wants my genealogy stuff, my historical photos or my actual pedigree charts or research, you really don't have to go very far to find like third cousins. Maybe you never even knew your third cousins, but they're researching the same lines that you are. So they don't have to be descendants of yours to inherit historical items. They could be second cousins, third cousins, people you don't even know. And of course, the way you find them is on Ancestry.com by doing genealogy. So that there are people to hand things to who might be very interested that you don't even know.
Do any of you have any lists of things that we've just been talking about where to donate this? Do you, any of you have a
We
resource?
do. We're the two of us. I'm sure she has tons of resources. The two of us are in a society, a local society called Professional Organizers of New Mexico, and we have a list that we can. If you email one of us, we can share with you the donation sites that we've put together.
Do we have that in our goods, in our packets here?
Over there on the side, you can get our cards, and both.
Or if you put your email on your drawing slip, I will take care of sending that to you from the festival.
That'd be great.
There's a woman back here, been patient to ask a question.
Not going anywhere yet.
Yeah, good.
I want to make a comment, but then I have a question. I recently had to downsize to move out here, I had to clear out like 50-some years of stuff from my parents' house that I was living in because I was stubborn and didn't do it over the so many years prior to moving. In my haste, well, first of all, I found that the collectible things, plates, you know, those fancy Hamilton plates you're paying $30 a piece for so many years ago, are worth maybe $4 now if you find somebody to buy it. There's a lot of those things people just aren't buying anymore. I had an antique, what do you want to call it, an auctioneer guy came in and looked at this, didn't want my baseball cards, didn't want, and no, nothing. He's like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. So I did one of those, pay this guy to take the crap out of your house. Okay. So that brings me down to, I have a brother and a sister who are thrower-outers. I'm the hoarder, and I couldn't bring it all with me, which was a good thing, but I couldn't. So what do you do about the guilt of, like, you know, the flashbacks that I have of my grandfather's chair, and I'm like, I could be sitting in his chair.
Are you gonna forget your grandfather because you don't have the chair?
Well, no, but see, it's just, you know, and then it gets to the fact that
versus-
I have to struggle with
Yeah.
the fact that I never sat in it while I had the chair. Okay?
It was gross, right? It was
Oh,
gross.
no, it wasn't gross. It was an outside lawn chair thing. It wasn't gross. But it was always in the shed. And it's like, but we got rid of poor Pop's chair. You know, and it's like, I lament, I guess is the word. Is that a word? It's a word. I don't know if it's the proper context. But, okay.
Yeah.
Over the loss of those things.
Well, what you need to do is look forward to what your life is going to be like now. That's one way of dealing with the guilt. But prior to the time you actually get rid of the chair,
Right.
one of the tricks is to take a photo of the chair.
And I do that with some things,
I
but
bet.
there's
if-
many, because of the rush to,
Yeah, I bet if you go through the photos, you did you keep some photos?
Oh, I kept the
There's
photos.
probably
I
a
kept.
picture of that chair in some family event thing. That's what I found when I went through.
Yeah.
But you can also do flow writing. Like, what was the story to me about that chair and Pop, and what was that story? And if you write the story, then you're actually holding onto the chair in a way.
And I can get it to stop in my
Yes,
head.
exactly, because you're putting it on, just a flow, you can do a flow writing and then turn that flow into a story. And that's a really powerful exercise for getting through the guilt factor.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We need somebody to point. Gail?
The woman in the leopard has been wanting to pipe
Oh,
in.
no, that's okay. I just had a comment because I do have children. And all my friends who have children, the kids are more minimalist, so they're not accumulating the stuff. They don't want the stuff. And they don't know the people, you know, so my great-grandfather, they don't have that connection. So we're feeling guilt, but our kids don't have that same connection. To them, it's just clutter that they have to do something.
Well, that's because they don't know the story.
Right, but even then, you know,
And
yeah, because they didn't know the person. Yeah.
I've also found that as I get older, I'm more interested in the stories and stuff. And so they may not have reached that age. So it's still important to keep the stories, I believe, not the stuff. So.
And they're moving more. You know, we bought a house. I mean, I've been in my house a long time. My son is 24. I move him every year. It seems like he moves every year. So they don't want to carry the baggage with them them every time they move. So, you know, anyway, that's just, I think, what we're finding with the generation that's coming after us.
Yeah.
Well, my good friend recently moved into assisted living.
I can't hear a word
Oh,
you
I'm
say.
sorry. My good friend just recently moved into assisted living. And his family took care of everything, you know, estate sales and so forth. And the last thing they're working on now is like 4 cabinetfuls of precious moments figurines. Now, you know, Bob asked me if I wanted them. And I said no. I didn't want to say no. I hate precious moments with a passion. You know, I mean, anyway, his granddaughter is trying to sell them like over the internet or whatever, and hopefully she can sell them all because, you know, and at a fairly decent price because it'll help his, you know, finance his stay in the assisted living home. That's what everything got sold for. 3 cars, the house, the furniture, garage sales, estate sales, and now we're down to the precious moments.
And they're like the plates. They're worth about $3 a piece.
Yeah, I think so.
Almost, if you can find somebody to buy it.
I had a client with Hummels, and
Those
like
are insane.
every Hummel, and 4 of the 400 were worth more than $20.
Yeah, and it's the same way with the grow.
And it
all those
depends,
other
like the year
things we
before,
use
they
always
have been
more.
worth. So it depends on the week, but investing in collectibles is not the way to go.
And if you want to know what they're worth, it's easy. You look it up on eBay.
And you don't look for what they're for sold, how much
But
they pay, people actually pay for this.
that, what she said.
Right, they
What I was
can,
gonna
they can
say.
ask
Yeah.
whatever they want, but what they
Right.
What are
actually
people
get
actually paying
for it is
Right, yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment, I don't know, because I don't think people think about it. Full disclosure, my day job is to sell memorial headstones. One thing we help families with is if you've got a specific piece of something you want to remember by, if you take that, turn it into artwork, and then engrave it on the memorial, it's there forever. And so you can do it, modern technology can do it in so many ways. If you have a chair or anything, you can literally put anything you want within reason into granite if you choose to have a memorial. And then it's there forever. I mean, it's literally there for 1,000 years. And so if you have that one piece that everybody agrees upon and says, that's that, it's good to start having a conversation now about maybe that's something we want to perpetuate through permanent memorialization as we go forward, and start thinking about that now instead of when Dad dies and go, oh, what am I going to do? So just something to start thinking about along with the decluttering process. If there's a defining thing, Mom and Dad's Winnebago that they went all over the country in, whatever it is, have those discussions now so when the time comes, everybody's on the same page as how they remember.
Cool.
I want to kind of tap back into in the gray sweatshirt back here, because I think because we work with things every day, sometimes we can sound maybe a little abrupt, kind of get over it.
No, you gotta work through it.
Yeah, and I can't speak for you, but I'm sure you're similar to this. I really always encourage people to honor the attachment they're feeling to an object or collection, or in your case, this entire home of items. And that's not an unusual story that I don't want to call you a hoarder, but you had more memories attached to the things and probably to the people that were always in that home than your brothers and sisters. In fact, one of our estate pros right now, her mother just died in May, and she's going through that. There's 5 children, and she's the one who's really saying, no, let's take time with the jewelry, and there's really nothing of monetary value. It's all sentimental attachment, which is really important, I think, for us to honor. And so I'm just saying to you, even though the emotion of it may be painful in the process, I would say if you would welcome that and let it run its own course, I think it will come to it will be diminished over time. And certainly this writing about things will really help. I'm not a published writer, but I write a lot. And for my son's graduation from law school, I collected about 90 pages of writings for him. And even though it was a gift to him, I was really thinking about his great-grandchildren, of course, who I'll never meet, I'll never know. And it's not that I want them to know the name Karen Hyatt sometime in 75, 100 years. I just wanted to add to the family story so that these great-great-great-great-grandchildren someday could say, oh wow, way back in 1953, my great-great-great-great-grandmother was born and this is part of her story, or these are the things she was concerned about. So the writing can really allow us to externalize it and honor it and memorialize it for others who come along. Yeah.
Just in addition, I think there's a way you can let go of the easiest stuff first, and then go through again and the next layer of easiest stuff. And what happens in the way our brains work is we then have more information to make a better decision for ourselves. So feeling pressured to have to get rid of everything this weekend because we got to downsize this weekend is a completely different experience than get rid of the easy stuff and then a few months down the road, getting rid of another layer of the easy stuff. Because every time you make a decision, you get better at making decisions and you have more information to make the other decision. So for example, I want to keep this cookbook. I think this is the cookbook that the bizcochito recipe is in. And then 3 weeks later in the other room, finding grandma's old recipe box with the actual recipe for the bizcochitos, you can now get rid of that cookbook, right? So you end up with a little more information when you know what you own, and then you can make the better decision. And I'm not going to tell you which of the two bizcochito recipes.
And I think we're all on board with the telling the story, and as a form of therapy, as a form of passing the family stories down or your own personal stories. But you can't, if you really want to pass them down to someone, you have to let them know. It can't just be sitting on your computer in a file that nobody knows about. It can't just be on a piece of paper somewhere that they don't know what else is in that box and they don't go through it for 16 years because it's in their brother's shed. It can't be. So whatever is important to you that you're keeping or that you are letting go of and want to tell a story about, make sure someone else knows about it.
You were talking about recipes. What I've been doing recently is I've had a lot of recipe books, but for me, recipe books generally only have a handful of recipes that I really like. So what I've done is I photocopied the recipe, put it on a 4x6 card, put it in the little photo album, donate the book. And I've downsized a lot of books. So now I've got a stack of little photo albums about like this tall, and and that's a lot easier. And then I sort through them, and as I go through them, they try them. They either stay or they go.
Right. Great idea.
That's
Perfect system.
Yeah.
So that's because recipe books can get applied
Yes.
real quickly, and some you never really look at.
A woman in Santa Fe last year had a similar suggestion about, through our lives, we've all collected photographs, the old-fashioned kind, that are actually in your hands, not digital. And as far as I know, she's not anywhere close to dying. She looked to be maybe 50. She was in a presentation similar to this. But she told us that she had taken the time to gather all of her photos from vacations, friends, family, and she enjoyed looking at them again. But then she sorted them all according to person. And then she took the time to write a letter to that person and mail that person all of those photos. So again, she had a chance to relive the memory and then write about it. How many times have we said that now? But then she shared them with someone else, so they were now on her friend's dining room table, not hers, which is kind of a way to share the joy.
Or her friend's conscience.
Yeah, right, now it becomes her friend's problem, so.
Yeah, spread your problems around.
I did have one with my cousin, of whom I have many, and I was so relieved.
Good.
And they were so thrilled, and now it's their problem.
Yes, good for you.
Sir.
So when you get through the process, you're taking your small little bites, and now we're downsized. How often should you be revisiting that? Because I moved probably 6 times in the last 8 years. So you downsize on the move, and then you grow into the house you live in. So how often should you be revisiting the downsize?
At minimum, every time you move, don't ever move things you don't want. If you stop and look at all your stuff as you're packing it up, if you don't want it now, don't move it.
Yeah, definitely that. But I do feel like regular review is necessary and build it into the system I suggest for people. Part of it is kind of on the fly, like you open the closet and you realize that shirt doesn't fit anymore, you drop it into a donation bag you already have set up so that you can take it regularly. But I also know, like for me, I've been super busy this year. I don't know, my business got really busy. And so I get home and I'm like, oh, all those little things that normally go out are still sitting there. And I actually had to put some time aside this weekend to actually do just a quick run through the house to grab all the stuff I've been needing to take out of it. So I think like a yearly review is a really good idea. I don't do like seasonal switch outs, but if you do, that's a perfect time to do it. Or just, you know, spend one Saturday a year kind of opening all your cabinets and pulling out the stuff that you don't care about anymore.
One of the things I found helpful in all my trips to Goodwill is that my goal is to have an empty shelf in every closet. and so when I have an empty shelf, I'm really, really excited. Because it is amazing how quickly I can put things back on. That's right, surprises.
You know, one of the things too is we age, sometimes it's just harder to do the physical task, to bend over, to lift, to pack the box, you know, to deal with the packing tape, and then to put it in the car and take it to Goodwill. And certainly you can hire professionals as we are, but I often suggest noticing the teenage kid, you know, on your block who'd love a chance to drive and a reason to drive if they have a license. But to come in maybe for 4 hours on a Saturday morning to help you, they can earn a little money and then they can drive the stuff away. But I think there's a lot of ways to, someone, who was this last week said, oh I know, it was a client that I did an assessment and she said she had really found this downsizing process was a social event because one of her sons had come to town for a week to help her. And they love sharing the stories, but that's when I suggested when he's gone, maybe hire a neighborhood, you know, teenager, because then you have the social event. And you can share, you know, a sandwich when it's over or whatever. But you don't have to work in isolation about it, because it does get a little boring, honestly.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more fun with help.
Yeah. I've had Hazel come to my house to help me
It's
with
the,
my office.
yeah.
Just because it's boring. It's like I was never getting in my office. It's like, Hazel, come sit and chat with me while I do it.
And then you have to figure out ways to celebrate yourself. Like a lifelong friend of mine, Trish, whenever we reorganize something in our homes, we send pictures of it to each other, you know. And I have literally been known to get up out of bed at night and go back out to the garage and look at what I did that day. It's like, oh, this is so good. So it's just kind of nice to go, yeah, pat yourself on the back, you know, when you get an empty shelf. It's a very big deal. Or when you
closes a loop
Yeah,
in your brain.
yeah,
It's a feedback loop that you can accomplish something. And when you don't finish it, it is a feedback loop that says you can't. And so taking the time to do it, even just one drawer, one shelf, one section of a table, whatever it is really super powerful to step back and really be proud of yourself for doing however many inches it was. Or if it's a whole garage or room or shed or storage room, apparently.
Okay, now you're pointing a finger.
And as you're going through your things, you know, whoever you're doing it with, if you start to tell this big long story about something, you know, you might be leading up to, I think I can get rid of it now, I think I can part with it now. Or you might realize, this is one of those things I need to write a story about and keep forever and make sure people know why I'm keeping it.
So I guess my block is sort of the opposite of what some people have discussed. I have things that I don't have a great attachment to, but what I have is the attachment to the fact that it's my memory. Like maybe, I mean, I don't have memories specifically attached to those things that are important to me. So it might be a card from somebody I went to school with. So I'm thinking, if I throw away this card, I will never remember the name of that person I went to school with, even though I'm not gonna, there's nothing specific attached to that person in terms of, you know, it's just that, well, I'll never remember, you know, I don't know what happened in college, or even though I don't really remember. Like some things I've been able to throw away because I look at that name and think, now this is ridiculous because I do not know who this is, or I don't know who this is a picture of. But I think, well, the more things I throw away, the more I'm not going to be able to remember. You know,
But the more
what
things
happened
you
in
throw
college.
away of things you don't care about, the more space you got in your brain for the things you do care about.
Okay.
So if I ran across a card and I just barely remembered the person and don't care about them, and it's not like we had great memories, and it's not like I'm ever going to get in touch with them, I would throw that away.
Okay.
But if it was like something from my grandma, and of course I mean I do, and not everybody does, but I have wonderful memories of my grandma, then the issue becomes, how much do you have that reminds you of your grandma? Do you have like 3 things? In which case you might want to keep all of them. Or do you have 300 things? In which case you might want to narrow it down to 30 things. You know, it's all about quantity and how much space you've got to work with and how much stuff you have to fill that space with.
You also might want to look at, okay, so every time we remember something, we remember it differently through the lens of our experience up to this point, not up to the point where the memory or the event occurred. So you're not remembering it right anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But you also might want to look at what is the fear about not remembering? What is that really about? Is it about losing your memory or your mind,
I think it's
or the missed opportunity of what that represented?
I think it's a feeling of losing my story. Part of it is
So write your story.
losing my story. Yeah, yeah.
But if you wrote your story, would you include that person in that
No.
part?
Yeah,
So that's a good way to decide what to get rid of. What is a part of your story or not?
Yeah, does this go in the story? And even just something as simple as we were talking about inventories earlier, and there's different reasons for doing inventories, whether it's for insurance purposes or knowing what's available for an estate or sorting out people problems, or sorting out what is your story. So as you get rid of things, it might help you as well. Just jot down what it was you got rid of and the date you got rid of it. Now that's part of your, now the getting rid of things could be part of your story, or maybe it does make it in a different way, but you at least have a note jotted down about why that piece might have been hard for whatever reason. Does that help, Marianne?
Yeah.
I'd just like to also suggest another resource for us that feels so motivated to approach this challenge is Gail Rubin's book, Kicking
Yes.
the Bucket List.
Yes, that's
It
very
is excellent.
Thank you very much.
It's a nice compact book and it's got a bunch of stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we all
Yeah.
have these wonderful resources and it's fun to share them.
I have copies of the book here if anybody wants one.
Back in Ohio, where we're from, there is a movement called StoryCorps. And they give you the opportunity to go and actually tell your stories. So if there's that in New Mexico,
Yep.
that's a great opportunity. Just sit down in front of a microphone, have a conversation with family members, and then get that down to where you have it in your own voice. And they actually, StoryCorps will actually take those recordings, they, I think, submit them to the Library of Congress.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
And we do have them here. Off the top of my head, I think you just look up storycorps.org and they have the local resources, because I think here we have the traveling StoryCorps people that are willing to go to the remote villages and things as well. So it kind of rotates who you call at any given time.
And I'm glad you brought up the vocal, because some of us obviously are more prone to write stories, but others just don't have any interest in that, and that's certainly fine. But to record it, because I was really touched, Hazel, when you said that you found all those recordings of your mom's, and just to hear the voice again. My father died a long time ago, when I was only 32, and in the first few days after he died, I kept waking up at night and I would see him, you know, I don't mean I really saw him in the room, but I would see him in my mind's eye, and I kept trying to remember his voice. It was like, you know, I felt this urgency, and I know that was all in kind of the trauma of those first few days after losing him, but I couldn't quite capture his voice again. And it would have been so great. There was no way in the world he would have ever recorded his voice for anything. but it's a beautiful thing and it's visceral. It's not just a mental process, it's really in our bodies, you know, the sounds of people's voices. So I think your family or friends might really appreciate that. Maybe not dozens of cassettes, because that's kind of hard to go through. But, you know, a recording or two would be really a welcome gift.
Well, and now we have all of the digital
Yes.
Yeah.
players and stuff like that. The challenge with a cassette recording is deterioration.
Yes.
So, I mean, at least do something now with the digital
It can be
recording, as
transferred.
we've all got, you know, the old cell phones that help
It's,
that.
it's interesting because I actually have tapes from my grandmother that me and my mom put in a storage room in 1988, and I still have 7 of them to listen to. Because I think we started with like 40 of them. Because my grandmother lived alone and she would want to share stories with us, and so she would record them on her little Radio Shack realistic tape recorder. And so some of them are great stories and family history and stuff, and some are her watching the Donnie and Marie show. What the great costume is, and you don't know. And she would just use up the entire tape. So it might be a mix on the tape, and you have to listen to every single one. And sometimes it's just like, I can't go through another boring hour watching TV with Grandma today. But other times you're like, oh my God, here's the story about the time they went to Chicago for the World's Fair, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, I think recordings are really special, but they are kind of a pain to deal with on the other end at the same time.
And another tangential hook onto that, in our company, and I'm sure it's with you guys too, one of our values is the sustaining of the environment, you know, so that we're not harming the environment. So we're always trying to find second, third, fourth lives for whatever it is. And all of us know we have all of those 8-track, I mean, how ancient is that? And then cassette tapes left over from decades past. And a lot of course, we don't even have ways to play them anymore, most of them. Now, I'm not talking about family recordings, but just, you know, the Jackson 5 or something that might come up. But I'm trying to find this source because in the New York Times in the last year, I read a story about a company, a man in Los Angeles had figured out a way to recycle cassette tapes, the case and the tape, and he was making tennis shoes out of them. I mean, sustainable, wearable tennis shoes. And for the life of me, I haven't been able to find that source again.
I think I have it.
Okay, well, good, but there's just always a place, you know, to move those things along, so consider that.
And I would point out that if this was like a newspaper story, it's only necessary that one of you has that piece of paper.
We don't even need the piece of
information
paper.
may still be shared with multiple people and not have a piece of paper.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to Google it.
And I don't even know if I have it first generation, but I'm actually part of the environmentally conscious organizers special interest group for the National Association of Productivity and
Oh my
Organizing
gosh.
Professionals. Holy crap, that's a lot.
What's the acronym for that
That's a
one?
mouthful.
It is the Echo Sig of NAPO.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and one of the members is in Los Angeles and talks about this tennis shoe company all the time, and I've never sent stuff to them
Yeah.
personally, but I just have to call her and go, what's their name? Yeah.
So all we need is to know to contact you and you can put us in touch with people.
Exactly.
And all of us have cards over there, so you guys can email us or call or whatever, so.
And I'll give everybody your contact information through the drawing slips I'll provide you guys.
Yes.
So I was married 50 years this year, and I began to realize that things that I've had for 50 years are vintage.
Yes.
You know, that's very, and for some people, that's very interesting. So when I have been cleaning out, I found, you'll never believe this, I found my peignoir from my honeymoon.
I love it.
Avocado green. Attractive. And I remembered that the mother of my grandchild loves vintage clothes. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? And then I thought of her, and I said, I'm giving this to you, but feel free to throw it in the trash if you don't want it. She was so excited to get it.
Yeah.
So, who knew?
Yeah,
It was vintage, and I had not thought of it as vintage.
Yeah.
Pretty old.
All you boomers, all that stuff from the 60s, the mid-century modern stuff is hot right now.
Coming
I'm
back.
looking for a coffee table, I'm just throwing it out there.
So this is a reason not to get rid of any of our stuff.
No. I still think there is room for constant recycle and replacement of items, but pick what you want for your life at any given moment. And don't worry about what the future is gonna have.
There's also consignment,
Yeah.
if there's value, so.
There's what?
Consignment?
Stores.
Yeah.
And there's also, some of the high schools will take clothing for kids that don't have the money to buy prom dresses. So if you have, dress-up dresses, that of course we never wear anymore.
They also, at least 2 of the high schools in town have really great theater departments. So Sandy and Highland have amazing theater departments, so.
And Marcel Katie in this middle row right here is involved. She's one of our state pros, second from the end. But she's involved in all of your Albuquerque little theaters and community theaters. And they will take incredible things for prop departments and clothing and all that. Like all those furs, that no one wants or uses or anything anymore. And wedding dresses and photos and props of all kinds. So it's not that they'll take everything, but it's worth a shot for your community theaters.
So I have an old doll from my aunt that's probably over 100 years old. It was in good shape, but when it was sent to me, the eyes kind of fell out. It's one of those, has strings for the ceramic type things. I don't have a need for it, but I want it to go to a good home. So how do you get rid of it?
That one,
Let me rephrase that. How would you find a new home for it?
Yeah.
there are a couple doll specialists in town. I can never remember them off the top of my head, but the antique stores on Central, like classic Century Square,
Like
has
the old Highland Theater?
Yep, has an information booth, and any of those 4 antique stores there, you just walk in for the information booth and go, "Who's the doll guy?" And they will take you to the doll guy. They will send it to the doll hospital, and then
But I can give them a picture of it. I don't want to have to carry it until it's ready to release.
Yeah, and then he'll tell you the best way. Sometimes it's auction, sometimes it's a private collector, sometimes it is putting it in one of their booths. But they have been extremely helpful for all my doll. And dolls, unfortunately, are a little bit like some of the other collectibles. Some of them, even though they're old, are just not really worth much, and others are very valuable.
Yeah. If you know specifics about it, like who made it, or how old it is, or what country it came from, or anything.
You'd have to look at the doll itself to
Yeah.
determine that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that information, you could look on eBay for sold dolls to see
Yeah.
what they would actually sell.
I keep hoping I'm gonna have one of those things that shows up on the road show and on.
Don't we all?
Yes, yes.
So who would be a good person to take really old paintings to evaluate if there's value?
Are they Southwestern themed?
No, this would be like one, my mother-in-law, France or something.
Are they known artists?
I don't know, it's not my area of expertise.
Same thing, antique mall.
Yeah, or
I check Reno Fraser.
Art Fraser. And we have a bunch of good ones in town and in Santa Fe. And there's a couple that specialize in Southwestern art and antiques as well. Chris?
Does anyone have old instruments sitting in their garage, maybe that their kids had? The Albuquerque Youth Symphony Orchestra is always looking for instruments so that they can help their youth in the community. It's a great resource for that type of object. There's a place for everything in this community. Everything.
Okay, one more question. So, Southwestern style jewelry that does not have an attraction, how would you determine, again, value and?
I would take it to the Palms or Wrights, and they will do appraisals for you.
What's right, how do they spell it?
WRIGHTS, they're on Louisiana Manal. Is that where their new location is?
Yeah, definitely have someone look at it first. And, yeah.
I took a bunch of my stuff down to Skip Mason downtown.
Yeah, they're good too. Skip's a little of a wheeler dealer.
I was fine with that. And it's tricky to catch him on his schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he deals a lot more with kind of mass-produced stuff, whereas Wright's really has a lot of historical and, what is it, the Palms are just, they always have an appraiser on site.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes, and just so you know, sometimes even the Southwestern Native American jewelry, it's more valuable as the silver and turquoise than the existing piece of jewelry. So the other, they may tell you just to go to Thunderbird or Gold and Silver Exchange and turn it in. You'll get more than the jewelry.
The old Indian pot that's fair.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The old Indian pot, one of those clay pots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Palms are Wright's for pottery as well.
I'm sure you all know this, but just as a heads up in case you don't, because we're really sensitive to this, it's more so in Santa Fe, I think, because of the art market. But the ethical thing for the dealer to do, I'm not saying this is your ethical issue, but it's to protect you. If you take a bundle of jewelry to the Palms and ask them for an official appraisal, a written appraisal, then you pay them for that. And then they should not ethically be offering you money for what they've just appraised for. That's a separate thing. Then you'd have to take it someplace else to sell it, but you'd have that good information. Sometimes we take jewelry into someone, and oh, he's highly ethical in Santa Fe, but the minute he sees it, he'll say to me, Karen, do you want a written appraisal on this, or can I make you an offer on this? And depending on my knowledge base on behalf of the client, I'll make a choice right then. But he's so ethical, he knows that if he does the appraisal, he's not going to have a chance to bid on it.
Right.
And you can run into, just as you were intimating, some people are more wheeler dealer-ish than others. And I would just caution you to protect yourself, that you really be aware of that, because it's a conflict of interest.
There's also the slight chance if you have any imitation jewelry that is being passed as Native American, that they will let you know that as well. Like, that's not real, and depending on how intense they are, they may actually keep it. They may
confiscate it.
Yeah. I haven't had that happen but once, and it wasn't a big piece or anything, but it was definitely a violation of what tribes' intellectual property, and they kept
I
it.
think these are old enough that that was not an issue at that time.
All right.
I would like to suggest that maybe at this point we'll wrap this up, and if you have individual questions that you'd like to ask, or come and check out the materials that our experts have offered to you, please do. And we did bring cookies and coffee cake, so help yourself to a little snack. And yes, you have a, oh, you didn't get a slip? We'll get you a slip. And let's give a big round of applause for our downsizing